sold two different companies, one specifically with a partner network. So I'm going to just walk through that story of how I built the partner network, the benefits it had towards creating acquisition conversations, and how we transitioned that partner network over. And if you're in the chat, definitely help me out. And if you have any questions, definitely plop them in, and I'll see if I can get those answered. But to kick things off, I'll kind of go back in time to about a decade ago. I built a company called Business Apps, and I bootstrapped that company to about 10 million in annual recurring revenue, and then sold it to a private equity firm. And our main go-to-market strategy was actually through a white label partner network. And so if you're looking to sell a business for, 10, 20, 50 million dollars, having a partner network or being partnered with companies or having a distribution channel that is unrelated to just directly with your company can be such a huge advantage. And so, um, to break it down, as a bootstrap company, the reason that we chose a partner network for our go to market strategy was we were a do it yourself mobile app builder that was selling mobile apps to small businesses. And what we found out was selling to small businesses was very difficult in 2010. We'd make cold calls and say, like, hey, do you need a mobile app? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like appetizers? And so that strategy quickly, we had to cut it. And so one day I found a customer who had built all these apps in Switzerland for high-end hotels and restaurants, what have you. And I was 22 at the time. I thought he maybe owned the hotels. And so I called him, and he told me that he was building these apps on behalf of his customers. So very similar to, HubSpot's partner program. And what we did was, well, the first thing I did was I asked, his name was Raul. I still remember the call like it was yesterday. I was like, "How can I get you to sell more of these applications?" And he said, "Well, if you could white label your software, I could sell these apps as kind of like a lightweight custom mobile app solution." So we ended up partnering with over 5,000 marketing agencies all across the globe. We translated our product in 60 plus different languages. At one point at our peak, we were actually the number one producer of iOS apps in the world. And now I can't like confirm that stat, but what Apple does is they'll release numbers of how many apps they publish each month. And then we just look at the number that we would publish and we do simple math. And it come out to like 5, 6, 7% of all the apps produced was being produced on the business apps platform. So it just gives you an idea of the scale that you can achieve with a partner network. And the way that we really made it work was, number one, we were coming in at a time when web agencies really needed another product to sell to their customers, and that being mobile applications. And so what we did is we went all in on that strategy, and that worked out really well. And as we began to grow, web design company in Minnesota that had worked with all the restaurants in that city. We started partnering with public companies and really large venture backed companies, and we would integrate into their ecosystem. And that really put our company on the radar for these larger companies, and that eventually led to acquisition conversations. I can't specifically say what conversations we had with what companies, but you could probably guess, like all the do-yourself. Uh, Someone's saying, by the way, I love dropping the Microacquire slick. That is true. We are company's going to be acquire.com pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. Um, but to get to my point, just getting on a company's radar as a startup is so hard to do. And by partnering with them, you begin to build this relationship, and getting acquired can sometimes take years and years. And having them see your company evolve and grow and succeed with their customers, and really you create this kind of alignment where they see clear value in their product. And maybe it's on their roadmap, maybe it's not, and then you kind of put them in a build versus buy situation. And so that's what happened to me personally. And we had a number of different offers from strategic companies. Um, and then, how does that apply to maybe your business? How can you maybe think out ways to, implement a partner network strategy to help accelerate acquisition conversations. So, a lot of the acquisitions that I see at Microacquire have, integrations in the Shopify ecosystem or in the Salesforce marketplace. And, by doing this, you're not going to build, $100 million billion company. But if you're looking to sell a business for 10 or 20 or even 5 or $1 million, like this strategy is one of the best I've seen. I've seen people build applications on specifically the Shopify network the most, and they'll build these simple applications and then sell them for millions of dollars. And I kind of question myself, like, what am I doing? Like, what business am I in when I see these two people walking away millionaires, owning the entire business, selling it for million, and being very happy with the outcome. But there is a double-edged sword to that. You do hear a lot in terms of, platform risk, or, you never want to be too reliant on a single platform in case something happens where you're removed from the platform. So at Business Apps is another personal anecdote. We were partnered with so many different companies. We integrated with all of their partner networks that we were never super heavily reliant. I'd highly recommend is, in the beginning, go all in on one and focus on one, because it can be really hard to manage and you don't want to kind of half-ass it, if you will. You want to really nail it in one channel. And this is just general marketing advice. And then move to another one and then move to another one. But as each of these uh, partner channels are activated, you're essentially building a relationship with this larger entity. So if you're looking to sell your company again for, maybe it's not the IPO style strategy, but that puts you on the radar for, potentially, a life-changing acquisition. I know 10, $20 million doesn't sound like a lot to, most, VCs and stuff like that. But it probably is a lot to, the average person. So, just that's, a good strategy that I've seen play out, quite a bit. And then other things to think about too. So having a partner strategy also specifically for business apps, again, we were partnered with thousands of agencies all across the world, and they were essentially our outsourced, sales team. So basically what we would do, some these people, I like that gif of a person frowning at $10 million. Um, when I hear 10 million, I got two thumbs up. But so business apps, we had a partner network, and the power of a partner network as well when you go to sell your business is you essentially have an outsourced sales team or a commission only sales team. And so that was a huge selling point, because any company that we sold to, we had all these people that were willing to sell other products that the other company looking to acquire my company could potentially activate and then increase revenue for a different product or our existing product. So having all those relationships already built can be a huge attraction to a company that might have a similar customer base. It definitely did for us, because we had 5,000 agencies that had relationships with, you know like hundreds of thousands of small businesses all across the globe. So now you could sell products through that channel. And that's eventually what happened with business apps is, once the business was sold, more products were released to the partner network, and they had a catalog of products to sell. And so even if we didn't have a product per se, I mean, this might be kind of uh, going a little bit too far on how powerful a partner network. But let's just say we remove that builder, like our whole product was gone, but just the value that we built in cultivating that partner network and how engaged they were in terms of selling our product, the brand affinity that we built with them, that alone had so much value, because again, we could just swap out app builder with whatever other product. And if we had the right incentives aligned, you can activate that partner network and then make some other larger company really want to acquire you because you have massive distribution that you're selling on top of, your existing product, which they can also sell to their customers. So it's just this huge, win-win all around. Um, if you have questions as I'm going through this, please feel free to, put them in the chat and I'll answer them. So, first one is, can you share some best practices on recruiting and engaging the partners? So, when you're recruiting partners, there's definitely an 80-20 rule. So, we put a lot of effort into really figuring out number one, what's their goals, making it super easy to sell our product. Because you got to keep in mind when you sell to, when you're selling with partners, they have tons of things that they could be doing with their selling a different company's product. They could be selling multiple products. So you really got to make it as easy as possible to really get partners to actively sell your product. So that means we had white labeled marketing materials, we had white labeled training, we had white labeled websites that we would build for them, like a landing page. Like we offer mobile apps now. Taking a little bit further, once you're more established, we had customer conferences. We really invested a lot in that relationship. And so everything from how to market the product, how to sell the product, um, how to find leads for the product, everything you could possibly do. And I guess long story short, what I'm trying to say here is we really treated them like our in-house sales team. We'd get on the phone with them, we'd onboard them, we'd train them, we'd have tons of materials, both, pre-recorded so we can do this at scale. But then also if they needed something, more specific, we'd have something available to them. Like if they were selling to a specific niche, we'd have a special, strategy call with other partners that are in that niche so they can learn. So another part of a partner network that it can become really powerful is making a community out of it. We also had a Facebook group where, other partners began to help other partners, and some of them actually became lifelong friends, like even to this day, which is pretty cool. And even since I've sold the business, sometimes I'll see people drop in on, my LinkedIn comments or something like that. Like, hey, I was one of your first resellers. Like, it was such a great, like, we really made it like fun and we invested and we just showed that we cared is kind of the, I do agree Facebook community partnership isn't a bad idea. It's just so easy to manage. But that's a conversation for another time in terms of what the best platform is to have. It could be on Slack. It could be a Twitter hangout. It really should just be where your customers are and what's easiest for you to manage. Let's see. What other questions do we have here? Common question. Why should agencies, partners work with a new and unproven startup? That is a really, really good question. So there's one that I always kind of reference in terms of just building startups in general, and that's really closing the reputation gap within your business. No one's going to trust you as a startup. You have to earn that right. And so when you're new, you're going to have to make certain concessions. And that generally means, for us signing up our first um, partners, the way that we would do it is we'd offer massive discounts because we wanted to prove ourselves. And so, that kind of led to a snowball effect where we had, you know, basically we were discounting customers today so we can capitalize on future customers tomorrow by creating case studies. You always want to get something in return if you do any sort of concession or anything like that. So we did a lot of that in terms of, kind of getting the flywheel going, but getting those first partners to really bet on you. um, you know, Thinking back, some of our first partners stayed with us all the way, for like a decade. So, I think it just really comes down to getting really narrow on your ICP, building up your brand, trying to get some sort of press, trying to have, a compelling story. We really had this strong, David versus Goliath story that we would tell partners. Like, most of our partners, they worked with small businesses. And so, we would have a, kind of a pitch where it's like, hey, you work with a lot of restaurants or cafes, what have you. We also serve, gyms, you know, uh, any type of small business you can really think of, schools. But restaurants was probably our biggest category. And we kind of say, hey, Starbucks spent I don't know, $2 million on their mobile application for mobile ordering, loyalty programs. They're taking customers away from your customers. And so we had a really compelling story of, this David versus Goliath sort of, you know, this these mobile applications aren't just for, huge corporate, public companies. Like we've made them available for, everyday small businesses so they can compete against these mega brands where their customers are, and that's on their mobile devices. So that was just, I'd say, to answer that question in summary is just, understand it's always hard to get the customers to trust you because they're really making a bet on you. They're your early adopters. So your goal with those first customers is to really leverage them and make them successful towards other customers. So when new customers come in, you have a set of successful customers where you can share the case studies, you can share the success stories, they can be used as references. And then that's kind of a snowball effect. And that really, really worked for us. And then at one point, you're kind of the dominant player in the market, if you will, in terms of a partner network for that product. And then on at that point, you'd really just focus on, just keep doing what you're doing and investing more in just the success of your partner network. So I'm headed over to the question. So if you have any questions, definitely put them in. So one thing, what do you think a well-defined partner strategy does to a company's valuation? So, Hunter, nice to see you, by the way. I think it really depends. If it's sometimes a partner, strategy, let's say you're just only integrated with, I don't know, LinkedIn or something like that. Like your whole product is dependent on LinkedIn. That can cause some risk in the eyes of buyers because it's called platform risk. Because what if LinkedIn goes away? Or if you have, let's say, my only partner was, I don't know, GoDaddy or something like that, and they accumulated or they accounted for 90% of our revenue. That's going to really lower your valuation because you have so much concentration in one customer. And then on the other hand, with the LinkedIn example, you have a little bit of risk on your business because if LinkedIn says whatever you're doing, you can't do it anymore, or kicks you out of their store, and this could apply to the Salesforce App Exchange. This could apply to Shopify's App Exchange, what have you. So it really depends. But in good scenarios where, let's say, you built an app and now it's in the Shopify app ecosystem, I'd recommend diversifying so you're not just reliant on one channel for distribution. But if you do it correctly and you're getting a lot of customers for free in these built-in marketplaces, it increases your valuation because it's just like organic customers coming to you completely for free. So it can be a double-edged sword, but it's usually a benefit. But just there's some things to work out for where you don't want to be just so reliant on this one channel and to kind of spread it across a few if you can. Another question coming in is, what tools did you use to manage partners at scale? Well, building startups a decade ago, unfortunately, we didn't have too many tools. So we built our own partner portal. We built everything custom because we had to. There's other great tools. I think Partner Stack is a good tool, and there's many others that I would highly. If I can go back in time, I would use one of those tools in a heartbeat because we spent way too much on R&D building out custom tools because there's nothing available. And that's just like simple things like tracking who sold what, how do you pay them out, all that stuff's already been solved. So unfortunately, we had to do it the hard way a decade ago. So everyone here has, a much easier time now. I don't have a best recommendation today for who's kind of the best platform to use, but um, yeah, we had to build it all custom, and it was kind of painful. Let's see what other questions we got. And I guess another point I would bring up too is, you can get a lot of different ideas in terms of, let's say, just let's back up a bit. Let's say you're just wondering, maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking, I want to build $1 billion company. Or maybe you're listening to this and you want to build like a 1, 5, 10 million. Like which how does this make sense to me and like what do I want to do? If you're looking to build like a huge massive company that's going to IPO, the route that probably makes the most sense for you is building, a partner strategy that you control, where you control the customer relationship as much as possible, because that gives you kind of more scale, if you will. But there's so much opportunity to build just simple applications and then find all your distribution through third party networks. Again, like Shopify, Salesforce, who else has a good app exchange? Um, I believe HubSpot has one now, Slack. There's so many opportunities to just go through those marketplaces and just see what, some of the highest performing applications are. Look at those, see if there's, any potential gaps in the market, read the reviews, see what people hate about it, see what people love about it, build something similar. So that's one strategy if you kind of want to go the bootstrapped, just swing for, 1, 5, $10 million, which is, I think, an extremely, extremely awesome outcome. But if you want to go kind of the big IPO, 100 million a year business, having a partner strategy similar to like HubSpot is kind of the way I would go. Great question coming in. So, what's the biggest mistakes you made? So, I made pretty much every mistake you could possibly make building startups, but related to a partner network, I would say the biggest mistake we made was we weren't really too focused on, and I think this just goes to any sort of um, partner network, is we had so many different partners and we wouldn't, I wish we could go back in time and invest more really performing, where maybe we gave them some sort of exclusivity or some extra incentive to sell, more applications. Like they had figured it out and they were proven to know how to sell our product. They had a large category of customers. And I think if we had, created relationships a little bit deeper, we would have helped them sell more applications. So there are opportunities to have partner networks that are more focused on just the best resellers or the best partners or however you are naming your partners. So if I could go back, that's probably the biggest mistake I think we made is, like we had a huge partner in Brazil, but then we also had like 100 other partners in Brazil. And so that kind of diluted, their ability to sell, because then we kind of put partners in a situation where, they were basically having to lower their pricing because a new partner would come into the market, lower their pricing. I remember that being an issue. And also another funny mistake, actually not funny, but embarrassing. We translate in for Brazil, one of our biggest customers in Brazil, using Portuguese, Portuguese, and there's Brazilian Portuguese. I didn't know that was different, but it's really offensive to speak that in Brazil, I guess. And the customer was super, almost lost the customer. So as you start to expand internationally, um, maybe something to think about, language, stuff like that. And that also kind of brings me to my next point is just, I think one of the most powerful things you can do in terms of, when you're looking to sell your business is, you're really trying to outline growth opportunities. And so when we were having conversations of selling business apps, because our partners weren't just in the United States, they were in Brazil, they were in Europe, they were in Israel, they were in Australia, they were in so many different countries that, again, this partner network had so much value, even outside of the product that we were selling. So you instantly had international exposure just by acquiring just our business and our customer relations. So um, I think that's another awesome thing to point out. So back to a few more questions. What advice would you have for a company that is tied into other partner programs and now starting to build their own? That's a good one. I would say definitely just go with what works. I mean, I always say, build it with duct tape first, prove it out. And then once you've proven it out, scale it out. And if the only reason I would move off of a partner network into something where you're building your own is if it's just not working, or if you need to hit the 100 million revenue mark, or if there's some limitation that's getting you to where you just can't get there. Um, Two more questions, and then I think we're gonna have to wrap this up. But how do you assess whether a company would benefit from partners? What type of company would you recommend to partner? What type of company would you not recommend to partner? I think honestly, I think every company should have some sort of bilinear growth strategy. What I mean by that is leveraging other companies and other organizations, other individuals to help you sell your product. I'm a big believer that distribution can be one of your biggest competitive advantages. So whether that's through an app exchange marketplace or a full white label reseller program, I don't think there's any downsides. I guess the only type of company I'd recommend it not for is maybe like a really early stage startup where you already have so much to do, because the undertaking of putting on a partner program is a lot. It's a lot of work. And we spent years on it and it was our sole focus. So I would say just take into account the resources and the focus that it's going to take to really activate that partner network. Because if you don't invest in, just like a sales team, if you don't invest and train and support and really encourage your sales team to succeed, it's just not going to work. Um, and then moving on to another question. Would you agree that it's best to understand your partner's businesses rather than assume they are all the same? Absolutely. I mean, every partner you bring on is going to be different. They're going to have different goals, different needs. They could be a big company, they could be a small agency. And so tailoring kind of your pitch to them, or the materials that you deliver to them, like for some of our biggest partners, the public companies, we would go into one tip to really make and this is something I learned the hard way, but one tip for, let's say you're partnering with like a really, really big company and you really want to make it work. The best tip I have for that is send them leads. Send them leads that are basically gonna close no matter what, just to build excitement and momentum in the building. So their 100-person sales team goes, "Wow, okay, people are actually buying this product." So you kind of get that wheel started, if you will, inside of the large organization to start the conversations around why they should be focusing on your product. And that is what really gets acquirers excited, is when they can see their sales team getting excited about your product, however it's being sold. In our case, it was again through white label reseller partnerships. But that's one small tip for larger organizations as you partner with them. Um, but yes, definitely tailor it regardless of size. And I think we're out of time here. So I hope this was helpful. If anyone has any additional questions just about how to set up a partner network, how to position your company for an acquisition when you have a partner network, uh, pe- please feel free to email me, Andrew at microacquire.com. Pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm also inbox zero weirdo. So if you shoot me an email, I'll definitely respond to you. But appreciate everybody joining, and thanks everyone for putting on this fantastic event.